And the Satmar Rebbe says, my Hasidim in America are different from my Hasidim in Eretz Yisrael. My Hasidim in America, they come, they give me a pigeon, they give me some money, they give me a tzedakah, and they ask me advice. My Hasidim in Eretz Yisrael, they ask me for money, and they give me advice.
Today we will be continuing with Rabbi Shmuel Bloom, former Executive Vice President of Agudah Yisrael of America, to talk about the day that Vice President of the United States came to speak at the Agudah Convention for the first time. It was also the day of the Patira of Reb Moshe Sher. Rabbi Bloom will take us through that historic day. We will also be talking about, after Reb Moshe Sher's Patira, how Agudah Yisrael continued and grew and spread across the United States. It used to be only based mostly in New York, and now, as we know, in almost every single Jewish community across the United States, there are Agudah shuls, Agudah organizations that help the community and individuals. So we will be talking about how that happened. We will also be talking about different projects that Rabbi Bloom was involved with throughout the years, such as Temech, an organization that helps tens of thousands of Jewish women in Eretz Yisrael to have a job in a frum environment. Also, the time that Rabbi Bloom came to Eretz Yisrael special to talk and help the Israeli Chavrei Knesset who were having difficulties in the Israeli government. All that and much more on today's episode. I'm Yisrael Yudkowsky. You are listening to Foundations Podcast. Let's go to the Patira of Moshe Sher, when it was, and kind of how the transition happened. The day after, as they say, after Moshe Sher was nifter, kind of what happened in Agudah Yisrael.
Well, let's talk about the day of, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his master plan, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, I wouldn't say his sense of humor, but Rabbi Sher gave his life for Kvod Malchus Shamayim. Rabbi Sher gave his life for serving of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when it came time for his Patira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged that the Patira should be on the day of the Agudah dinner. But not on any day of the Agudah dinner. The morning of the Agudah, Sunday morning, day of the Agudah dinner, in 1998, Tavshin Nun Ches. That was the only dinner that I know of that the guest of honor, the guest speaker at the dinner was the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. So we had arranged that usually we had a politician who came there, was a senator, was a congressman, it was somebody. But to have the Vice President of the United States was something that Agudah Yisrael had never had. And now, this dinner, Kadosh Baruch Hu arranged that the Vice President of the United States, on his way here on the plane from Washington, was informed that Rabbi Sher was nifta. And
was Rabbi Sher sick? Was it?
Rabbi Sher was sick. Rabbi Sher spoke to us during that week from his hospital bed. He told us he wasn't sure that he was going to be able to make the dinner, and gave us directions. He actually had prepared a speech to make, which Rabbi Shimshon Sher, his son, delivered. But at the dinner, we asked the guests of honor to wave. They had to come. Their guests had come. They were all ready to come. They put ads in the journal. It was supposed to be a typical of a special dinner with the Vice President of the United States coming. But we explained to them the special circumstances, and of course they accepted. We arranged for something else at a convention for them afterwards. But here the crowd had come, and all of a sudden phone calls were made that Rabbi Sher was nifta, and the Vice President threw out his old speech, tore up a speech that he had prepared, and he prepared a hesped for Rabbi Sher. So the dinner became a tribute to Rabbi Sher, led by some of the Rabbi Sher who had always had relationships with the government leaders, the presidents, the vice presidents, so on, had the opportunity that at his dinner the Vice President of the United States recognized the work that he had done in behalf of the community, and the Kiddush Hashem of that was magnificent. That night we got together. Right after the dinner, we sat around the table and we planned the Levaya for the next day. Levaya was in the Agudah Yisrael Borough Park, where Rabbi Sher davened many years, and Gedolei Yisrael came, and we limited the number of people who come inside. It wasn't COVID times, it wasn't the problem, but they limited. It was full, but the family actually felt, it was a nice Levaya. A few hundred people came to Levaya. But then when they finished all the speeches and they finished all the Hespedim, they came out on the streets of Borough Park, and for blocks and blocks and blocks, tens of thousands of people had come to pay tribute to the work that Rabbi Sher had done for Klal Yisrael. So it was a fitting tribute, and on top, to the icing on the cake, there had been arrangements. There was somewhat peace in Eretz Yisrael between Degel HaTorah and Agudas Yisrael, and the Gerer Rebbe and Reb Steinman wanted to show the achdus that they had, so they decided to come together to America. The day that they were arriving was the day of the Levaya of Rabbi Sher. So they went straight from the airport. Already it was too late to come to Borough Park. And the Levaya, the Gerer Rebbe and the Rabbi Reb Steinman came together to the Levaya, to the Beis Olam, to the cemetery, and where they went to be Malava Rabbi Sher on his final trip. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged all of this together. I mean, it's unbelievable. He says to give Rabbi Sher the kavod achron that he deserved for a life dedicated for the community, is that from the Vice President to the Gerer Rebbe, Rabbi Steinman, to all the Gedolei Yisrael of America, to thousands of people, the masses on the streets of Borough Park, they paid tribute. They gave the proper kavod achron to Rabbi Sher.
I think it's just so beautiful that, like we spoke last episode, about the achtas and the never fighting, and everyone was always together, no matter who it was, politicians, rabbanim, just anyone who was. Rabbi Sher was never, no politics, no fighting, it was just achtas. So it's so beautiful to see that, how does Levi, how does, the Alta and Agudah Yisrael, to see us.
I wouldn't say there was no fighting. There was fighting,
still,
right? It's not because it was principled. The fighting was principled. It wasn't for petty. It wasn't for petty involvement. He knew when he had to fight when it came to principles, and because of that, there were people who were objected, or people who fought it. But generally, people understood that it comes from a sincerity, that it came from an emes, it came from a want for Kvod Malchus Shamayim, and he gave his life for Kvod Malchus Shamayim that Klal Yisrael was able to be nana from, to be able to appreciate. Agudah Yisrael is a large organization. There's a lot going on. We've talked about some of the projects, but it needs leadership. Rabbi Sher had set up a 3-man committee that was managed. Rabbi Sher was sick for a while, and Rabbi Sher had arranged a 3-man committee, myself and Chaim David Zibel and Shlomo Gertzlin. The three of us worked closely together to maintaining the work. Chaim David Zibel did the government work. I did the management of the organization, and Shlomo Gertzlin in the fiscal offices. Between the three of us, we worked closely together. But the Motz Gedolei HaTorah sat soon after the P'tir Rabbi Sher, and felt that an organization like Agudas Yisrael, that represents so much of Klal Yisrael, in the Tafshin Nuns, at a different time. It wasn't the time Rabbi Sher had said. He says after his P'tira, the leader of Agudas Yisrael is going to have to have a beard, right? To have the leader of the organization of Agudas Yisrael at that time in our community, with the growth of the community, the way it developed, needed somebody of stature, and they asked the Nachmansker Rebbe to become the Rosh Agudas Yisrael. They asked me to be the CEO, the chief executive officer, together with help with Shlomo Gertzlin and Chaim David Zibel, to be the chief executive officer, to run the office, to see that things are going, to run the organization. But they felt that the Motz Gedolei HaTorah, which can't meet every day, should have a Yoda Richter, to have somebody represented in the decision-making process on a daily basis, almost on a weekly basis. He says to be involved, and they asked Nov Minsky Rebbe, who had a lot on his plate, who was doing a lot of things. He says the yeshiva, his Beis Medrash, the Rebistava, he had all of that, but Afal Pikain, he felt that he couldn't turn it down, right? Despite the fact that there was a time constraints on it, but he felt Agudah Yisrael was too important to turn that down. He was asked by his chaverim in the Alta, and he assumed that position. The three of us, the committee, would meet basically weekly with Nov Minsky Rebbe and go through the agenda and what's going on in Agudah Yisrael and get guidance and direction. And when major decisions had to be made, again, the Alta came together and met. So that was the process of the development after the P'tir of Rabbi Shera. But as CEO, it was checking with Nov Minsky Rebbe and the Alta and so on. It was my responsibility to give it direction, to give it guidance, to be able to create. And I sat down with some of the people involved, some of the staff members, and we said, an organization always has to review what it's doing and see what it's doing. Is it doing the right thing? How is it doing it? Is it doing... Agudah Yisrael is not a yeshiva. You have to teach the Talmidim. You have to have the Gemara. You don't have to have a discussion every month or every year. What are we doing? Maybe how we can do it better. But you know what your purpose is. Most organizations are single-purpose organizations, so they have a certain guidance. You have to RCCS has to help cancer patients, and Shuvu has to have education for Russian children. They're all single-purpose organizations. Agudah Yisrael is much broader. Agudah Yisrael is an organization that has to meet the needs of the community. The community changes, and at different times there are different needs. Every country has its own needs and its own circumstances. So you have to continuously look and see, what are the needs of the community? What are the things that have to be done? Where does the community need the help? Where can we build more Kedushem Shamayim? What can we do that's fresh, that's new, that's different? Continue the things that you have to that's still unneeded. Eliminate the things that don't have to be done anymore because you already accomplished sometimes the goals or they can't accomplish the goals, and you work on from there. The first decision that I think we made was that Rabbi Shera used to say, and people used to somewhat criticize, but Rabbi Shera admitted, he wasn't afraid of critique, that Agudah Yisrael was primarily a New York organization. It was centered in New York, where most of the Jews lived, and politically did some more national work. Rabbi Shera opened the national Washington office. We did some work on the national level, where with federal guidelines and federal regulations, but primarily the work was in the New York organization. Our convention was in New York. Our convention was primarily it's a New York area, primarily there. But Klal Yisrael was growing. Klal Yisrael was going throughout the country, and there was growth in different communities, and we didn't have the type of impact, and many of these communities needed this help. And so the first thing that we decided, one of the first things that we decided, was that we have to see to it that Agudah Yisrael becomes a national organization. The only way to do that is to open offices in cities throughout the country. Rabbi Yechiel Kalish became the director of the Agudah in Chicago. We had small offices in Florida. Moshe Matz was director of an Agudah Yisrael of Florida. Ariel Sadwin in Baltimore. And throughout the country, we started developing California. Irving Liebowitz was the chairman of the Agudah that we had before. There was a little bit of growth, but now to build on it and to get, and the effect of that was, as we went from year to year and from community to community, that Agudah Yisrael really on the national level began to have an effect where we worked with the national government, we worked with New York, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars for the yeshivas. All of a sudden, by going to Illinois and California and Maryland and Florida and now Massachusetts, so on, and Ohio had a tremendous effect. It is working together with those who were interested in aid to non-public school. Hundreds of millions of dollars began to come into the pockets of yeshiva parents to be able to pay tuition, because tuition was a major blow. And in Eretz Yisrael, tuition is a minor expense. In America, It's a major expense. Of course, I talked about New York, going out of town, and I spoke about some of the communities, but New Jersey. New Jersey is with Lakewood and Passaic and Edison, some of these larger communities, little Jewish communities that had to build, and the needs were so great. And the needs would grow so great in so many different ways, anti-discrimination and so on. To building offices throughout the country, is a goal that we undertook, and I think was one of the major accomplishments of the years after Rabbi Sher's Patir.
No, and was it that each Agudah Yisrael in all these cities were like they became their own organization, or it still was like a branch of the main headquarters were still in New York and they were just reaching out, or it was still each place was their own thing?
Good question. It was coordinated, and today the coordination has grown. The directors in each of the states, actually was an opportunity for people to get involved. Each state, each community had their own board, had their own balabatim. They hired their own staff. Ultimately, they paid for in most of the cases, they raised the money for it. But it became theirs. But by themselves, they couldn't do anything. They had to be coordinated with the group. We had a chairman of my time, Yechiel Kalish was the chairman of the group. He met with all the directors in the different cities. They met once a year besides the convention. A few times a year they would meet and they would outline the programs. They would find out what's going on in the different states and what can be helped, which states need help, and they work together. And they work together as a team. And they continue to work together. A team has had a major, major impact. Reb Chaim Levine told me that during the years that I was the CEO, he says Agudah Yisrael truly became a national organization. Chicago became Illinois and Chicago became a different state in terms of the relationship. Agudah Yisrael became a powerhouse, and the busing and aid to the yeshivas in Ohio, the scholarships. People move to Cleveland today because they can get vouchers for $5,000 or $6,000 per child. And he says, and tuition isn't the burden that it is in so many other states. He says, and all this was done because there were Agudah Yisrael staff and committees that were on the ground in these different states and developed.
There's the Agudah shuls. Is there like what's the connection between the shuls and the organization? Is there any connection?
So, at one time, Agudah Yisrael, which Rabbi Sher did not really believe that much in the shuls. The shul has a maila and a chesaron. It has the maila that you have a building, you have a sign outside, Agudah Yisrael of
free advertising. Right? I mean, not free because you need to pay for the building, but
right? He says you have a nucleus of people. The chesaron is that the work has to be much broader than that. And somebody says, "Well, I don't daven in the Agudah, so I'm not an Agudah, right? So I'm not a part of the Agudah." So there was always been this dichotomy and this discussion of what value. In other words, what we did do was we took the rabbonim of all the shuls and joined them together in an organization where the rabbonim can help each other and talk to each other and get guidance from each other. And that was a very, very important work in building the shuls and the communities. But then, in order to make it broader, the rabbonim identified other rabbonim who had either private shuls or other shuls in the community that weren't called Agudah Yisrael, but they were Agudah Yisrael community shuls, part of our community. And they invited rabbonim from the different shuls to come together and to work together and be part of that organization. There's a Midwest rabbonim, there's a National Council of Agudah Yisrael rabbonim. It was a very, very important, a very, very effective tool for building up the community.
Mm-hmm. And outside of because it sounds like most of the funds from the government were helping yeshivas and helping parents with tuition. Was there any other major roles that these Agudas Yisrael all over the United States, big thing that they were involved with in the community, or is mainly helping with tuition and yeshivas?
Again, every community has its own needs, and every community. That's the beauty of Agudas Yisrael. Agudas Yisrael doesn't have one function, one purpose, one goal. The one purpose that it has is to serve the needs of the Torah community. If the needs of the Torah community are starting a camp, or a kiruv group, or aid to the yeshivas, whatever it is in that community, and the local leadership, local balabatim, sit together with their rabbonim, and they decide what's most important for our community, and what do we have to do, and what do we have to build, and they go and on that they build. And that's the beauty of Agudah Yisrael. That's why it's flexible, and every community is different. Every community has different needs. Today, one of the largest and most important functions of branch is the Agudah Yisrael of New Jersey. With the Lakewood community, when people want to move to Jackson, the suburb of Lakewood, and the government tries to stop them, and the government wants to keep from people out, and who is there to? That becomes a need of the community, and the Agudah Yisrael of New Jersey goes to action and goes to court, and similar cases. He says anti-Semitism, whatever the needs are in the community, based on the decision of the local leadership in consultation with their rabbonim, that becomes the work of Agudah Yisrael.
So what were other big projects that you worked on after the Tzira of Reb Moshe Sher?
There were a number of things. Baruch Hashem, we talk about the needs of the community. Agudah Yisrael during those years were more or less quiet years, right? We don't have the discrimination that you have today, and things were working, but Eretz Yisrael was in trouble. Eretz Yisrael was in trouble. The Intifada, the Arabs were killing Jews, bombs, suicide bombs, and people were concerned. People were dying. And where is the Frum community in America? Where do we stand? Where are we involved? Just forget about that. Agudah Yisrael says that we're all one. We're all one people. And if a Jew is in suffering in Iran, or if a Jew is suffering in Russia, but certainly if a Jew is in suffering in Eretz Yisrael, and what are we doing about it? But what could we do about it? So the more secular organizations would go, and they were proud to show the flag. They'd go, we have a plane load of people, and we're going to go, and we'll go to the territories, and we'll go there, and put themselves in sakana. And our rabbanim did not appreciate that, and they didn't feel that was the right thing. Somebody says, sakana, you don't get any benefit just by going and showing the flags and saying, we support you. But we want to do something. So I think it was Irving Leibovitz, the president of Agudah Yisrael of California, who came up with the idea. And he said, what we should do is we should go and we should learn Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Torah magna matzla. Torah saves, Torah protects. We're interested in protecting you. We believe. So he brought it up to Shiloh. I discussed it with Reb Yisrael. He wasn't so sure it was the right thing. And so ultimately he said I should ask the Gedolei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael what they think. So I asked Reb Aaron Leib. And Reb Aaron Leib Steinman said, Torah magna matzla, you're right. You should learn more Torah. But why come to Eretz Yisrael? Sit in New York.
Kadosh Baruch Hu is also in New York.
Kadosh Baruch Hu in New York. Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you sit and learn in New York, it's going to help Jews in Eretz Yisrael. So you can do this. I said, we're talking about businessmen. And if a businessman is in New York or in California or wherever he is, and he's going to sit down and learn, he's going to get a phone call. One of his customers is on the line, so there's a problem in his business, so a doctor is going to get a patient. They're not going to be able to send him. If they come to Eretz Yisrael, they'll block themselves out from their normal lives, especially with the time zone till 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can't talk to anybody. They'll block them out, and they'll be able to sit and learn and Torah Magnum. No distractions, and they'll come there for a week. They'll give up a week of their business, a week of their jobs, and come and sit and learn. It'll be a beautiful thing. It'll be a Kiddush Shem Shemayim and Torah Magnum Matzlah. That way we're helping. Reb Aaron Leib said, okay. And I came back. It was at the convention. It was just before a convention, Agudah Yisrael, and I discussed it with Reb Yisrael and with the other Rabbonim, and I was able to announce Mitzvah Shabbos at the Agudah convention that Am Yirtzeh Hashem, we're going to have a delegation that's going to go to Eretz Yisrael and is going to learn Torah to support our Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Torah Magna Matzah, the one thing that supports us, the one thing that protects us is learning Torah. And few people came over, were interested in it, but now we had to develop a plan. Right? We made the decision, but now it had to go. So we made arrangements with a hotel, with the Ramada Hotel, and I called. I was in contact with Rabbi Leib, and who was like the Nasi of the project. And I said, okay, we have to find the Beis Medrash where the people can go to. He said, what Beis Medrash? Learn in the hotel. It's dangerous times here. We have to think back. It was dangerous times.
Yeah, the reason you're coming because of the Intifada and terrorist attacks.
Terrorist attacks. The Chas v'Shalom. Rabbi Leib felt a tremendous responsibility for that. And if he's saying that we could come, that means he's saying it's going to be all right. I'll tell you a number of years later when there was when the Intifada, the second Intifada, where we had to ask Moshe. But at that time, in designing the program, Rabbi Leib said, sit and learn in the hotel. Take a room in the hotel and sit and learn. He said, yeah, but we want to come to Rabbi Leib. We want Rabbi Leib to talk to us. He says, I'll come to you. You stay in the hotel. I said, they're coming to learn. That's all fine and good, but these are Zvulans. These not Yisachos, not people so used to sitting and learning all day. So the first Seder to learn. Maybe in the second Seder I can take them, they can visit Meisters, they can see different institutions, they should help.
Usually you have the Rosh Yeshivas and Rosh Kollel come to them, and now they could go to the actual Meisters that they support.
So they support. There are different types of different projects, Shuvu, or so, different projects that in Eretz Yisrael that they support. We should take them around and show them. He says, no. They're coming to learn, then they have to learn. Have to learn 3 storim.
Wow.
Is morning, afternoon, and night, and you have storim for them, and you have. So we advertised it, we developed it, we set a program, and the first year, I think we had 75 people who came. They learned in the, I think I'm wrong, I think the first year was like 40 people. We had 40 people, Balabatim came, they learned in the little shul in the Ramada Hotel on the second floor, and we had that, and the Gedolei Yisrael came to us. We had shiurim, outstanding shiurim. I think Rebel Pravarsky, Rebbe Sharieli, people of that stature came and said shiurim. In the afternoon we had halacha shiurim, halacha l'maisa shiurim, and at night the Gedolei Yisrael came. The Klosenberger Rebbe came one night, and the Rebbe Leib came one night. One year the Gerer Rebbe came. Rebbe Yehud Lefkowitz. People of that stature, Gedolei Yisrael, came, and Rebbe Michal Feinstein. I remember saying the Adam of the Briskerov. He just came and he spoke in the shul in the Ramada Hotel. The people went there. They came there. They sat and learned, and they felt that they were in yeshiva once again, and they really steiged and having such beautiful shiurim. So what happened is the next year, instead of 45, the next year was 75, and the year afterwards the shul was too small. We had to take up one of the ballrooms. And it became, yes, we're coming because we want to be mechazik the Jews in Eretz Yisrael and Torah Magna Matzlah, but this is an opportunity for you to grow, to take a week to go back to your yeshiva days and learn Be'iyun. You walked into there, it was like a Beis Medrash. I think David Cohen, the Rashiv of Chevron, says it's a Bar Beirav Dechad Yema. Right? There's people they come for these 3-4 days. They go back to the yeshiva years. And look, Chana said when he spoke once, he said, if you just have these 4 days, then you haven't reached the purpose. These 4 days have to make your whole year different, and it did, and it grew. Today, 400 or 500 people.
Wow.
Come.
So once a year, every year they
once
have
a year, every year. The year of COVID, they didn't have it. Last year they didn't have it, but this year they plan to have it again.
On Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, so they could do it. They started having these shiurim. They started giving these shiurim on Zoom because the people were so interested and so excited. Mm-hmm. They followed it through the year. And they also have preparatory shiurim. He says, Hachana shiurim. They take a topic and you go through the topic. You go through the sugya. He says, for there's 4 days and you come out of Talmud Chacham in the sugya with all the lumdis, with all the background, all the halacha l'maisa. It's a beautiful event. And if people can give up their work as doctors and lawyers and businessmen, and they come to this week of Yechiel, I said, well, I can give up my work as Agudah Yisrael also. Mm. He said, I came, and during that week, he's got a chavrusa, and we sat and we learned. We spent the time, he's just sitting and learning the Yechiel. And this is something which has lasted now beyond the Intifada. When the second Intifada happened, a lot of the wives were scared, and they were afraid to send their husbands. And I sent the Shaila to Reb Leib, and I asked them, whether we should have it that year, and what should I tell the husbands and the wives. And he didn't give me an answer right away. But a day or two later, I got and I wrote down, I don't have it anymore, I don't think I wrote it on a piece of paper exactly what he said. He said, if you come to learn Torah, basically, he says he guarantees that everything is going to be all right. And not only will it be all right, but you're going to be zeicha to brocha and hatzlocha and nachas. He gave heavy brochas for those people who come because he felt the personal achrais. There was an incident where it was a car accident, and somebody died in the car accident during the time of the Yechiel. And when Baron Leib was told about it, heard about it, he thought it was one of the participants in the Yechiel. And he was ice mensch because he had guaranteed that everybody comes there was going to be safe. It wasn't a big nechama to him that it was another Jew, but at least it wasn't somebody who came because of the Yechiel, somebody who came because of him. And he felt he really was the achroi. And later on, when he was, as years went by and so on, he was sicker and somebody came with serious nefesh. He came. There was one thing. He came. He wanted to be to participate with the.
Did another gadol take over the role of like the Nasi after he was nifter?
I'm not sure, because I'm not intimately involved. Who do they ask their shilas to? I'm not sure who they asked their shilas to. In terms of plans. So what they do with the American Rosh Yeshiva or here. But Baruch Hashem, there's no intifada right now, and hopefully things should be quiet. So it was originally designed because of that response that American Jewry wanted to do something, but it became something altogether different. It became a Yechiel, it became a Mokum Torah, it became a yeshiva, a Barber Rav the Chajema, that people look forward their whole year to come to be able to spend these 4 days in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, and learn Torah's Eretz Yisrael.
Are there any people from Eretz Yisrael who also join? Or
yes. Actually, over the years, numerous people from other countries, from Europe, from Eretz Yisrael, people who give up, retired people. Some people, again, you'd have the same problem. An Israeli who's in business, right?
The Israelis need to go to America.
To have the Yechiel. But many Israelis do come. Those who it's interesting. The program has become more and more English speaking. There are today English speaking gedolim in Eretz Yisrael. So a lot of the sessions are less Yiddish. A little bit of Ivrit. When they started, the Americans really had no shaykhs to the Ivrit, couldn't understand the Ivrit at all. We couldn't have an Ivrit. We started an English track. It was Yiddish. It was all Yiddish, with an English track, and then slowly but surely, they go along today. Many of the Gedolei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael today speak and outstanding Magid Yeshir speak English, and they look for English Magid Yeshir, and they have an English track. An English track, even when there's a Yiddish speech, they'll have an English track. America moved in that direction also today.
Going back to the year with the Intifada that Reb Leib Steinman put out a letter, was the Dafka less people came that year, or is still more or less the same?
No, I think that year people still came. In other words, they came, they asked the Shaila. Many people called up and asked whether it was the right thing to do and whether they should. And when I gave them the message, the written message from Reb Leib Steinman, people responded, people came.
I feel like that also shows like something so beautiful that even, there's also, you said also the wives are so worried and the families, and it's intifada. Like it's not simple. But you see, you have that, bitachon and trust in Gedolei Yisrael that, you have avtacha from Reb Steinman that's going to be okay. So like there's nothing to worry about. What's the problem?
Right.
Beautiful.
Actually, as long as we're in Eretz Yisrael, besides in the late 1990s, there was another major problem in Eretz Yisrael. Like today, where the government, where Agudah Yisrael was not in the Agudah Yisrael and Degel HaTorah not in the government, Yad Stature, there was a period of time they were out of the government. And things were rough. Things were rough because unlike America, where we don't have Agudah Yisrael Chavrei Knesset, Chavrei Congress, right? We don't have Agudah Yisrael members of Congress. We have to find other avenues to be able to use Shtadlanis, Rabbi Sher developed, to get the things that we need. In Eretz Yisrael, since Yad Stature is a political party, and they have power, they don't feel the need for other methods of solving the needs of the community. You have the political power, which they do have, which is fabulous. And because of that, they can get money for the yeshivas, and they can get the things necessary that they need for the needs of the community, whether it's housing and so on. You have a minister of housing who can be from Agudah Yisrael. Rabbi Yaakov Litzman can be the secretary of housing, or the secretary of health, the minister of health, and you need things. You have your people on the inside who know your needs, who are working together, working with you. In America, we don't have that. And in the late 1990s, Eretz Yisrael didn't have it. Just like today, they don't have it. They lost a lot of the power. And they were suffering. Regulations, finances, yeshivas getting cut back. So people pushed me in the United States. They said, look, we're one nation. It's Agudah Yisrael, even though we're Agudah Yisrael of America, and we have to take care of the needs of America, but we cannot ignore the needs of Eretz Yisrael. So I went to Eretz Yisrael, and I met with the Chavrei Knesset, and I met with the Frum mayors, and I met with the Gedolei Yisrael. Gedolei Yisrael first, and the others. And I actually introduced it with the story with the Satmar, they say, with the Satmar Rebbe. The Satmar Rebbe, after the Second World War, kicked Eretz Yisrael. 1949, I think it was, he left Eretz Yisrael, he went to America. It's a famous story, maybe we mentioned it before, that people asked him who's going to give them a bracha if he goes, and he said, when you see somebody putting on the tefillin, you see his number on the arm, and he's still putting on tefillin, he says, go, you can ask him for a bracha, he can give you a bracha. But he went to America. Why? So he had a sharp sense of humor. And the Satmar Rebbe says, my Hasidim in America are different than my Hasidim in Eretz Yisrael. My Hasidim in America, they come, they give me a pigeon, they give me some money, they give me a tzedakah, and they ask me advice. My Hasidim in Eretz Yisrael, they ask me for money, and they give me advice.
Yeah,
so,
welcome to Israel,
Exactly. So I spoke to the Chavrei Knesset, and I said, look, we're in America. We've developed, mainly Rabbi Sher, has developed methods and systems and put in place things that we can have our needs met through shtadlonis, through lawyers, through communities, community action, is the many things that we do through economic things, through projects, economic projects to help out the community, where we come on to the politicians, but the politicians is not really the power. We don't have that type of power that you have in Eretz Yisrael. Right now, you don't have that power. Are you interested that we should come and explain to you or show you or work together with you to develop some of these things so that you can have this in Eretz Yisrael also? And what do you say? Advice we don't need from Americans. We know Eretz Yisrael better, and we know how to handle it. And send us the contributions. We need your help. We'll welcome your contributions, but we're not really interested in your advice. I said, no, I'll accept that. I'll accept that. America is different, and you don't want our advice. To my surprise, they said that they were interested, and they would like help.
It's crazy that you got Israelis like that.
Yeah,
Usually they're much tougher than that. So
right. We'll see how it came out in the end. We'll talk about it, but at least in the initial reactions. So we went to Gedolei Yisrael, and we asked them what types of things we should develop. Should we set up a legal department like Agudah Yisrael in America has a legal department? Should we set up a legal department with lawyers who go to court? Remember, the Israeli courts are different, and many of them anti-Haredi. So what's the big benefit of going to court? Are we allowed to go to court? Are we allowed to go to Erchois, to court to fight for our rights? So we asked them these types of questions. That's one thing. Should we do some of the economic programs? Should we do the public relations? Agudah Yisrael of America has a whole staff and works on public relations to explain to the general community what the Haredi community is all about, and to point out the positive things and to react to things that are negative. Should we do public relations? So we made a whole menu of items and discussed it with them. And the first thing that they said, that they all agreed, that what is important and that we should do is set up a legal department. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Mazmin. We had a young fellow, Mordechai Green, who was a Ben Torah, Kol Yingaman, who had gone to law school and graduated high in his law school and became a clerk for the Bagatz, for the Supreme Court. So he knew the insides of the Supreme Court, and we said that if we're going to do it, it has to be American style, which means it has to be a board, a Balabatim, representing all the different communities. We had, I think, 8 members of the board, 4 from the Yeshivische, Litvische area. We had a Gera, we had a Belzer, we had a Vishnitzer, from the Klausenberger. We had 4 from 4 different communities. And these 8 people, each of whom was asked to contribute money, these were Balabatim, to contribute money to help pay for the project, and 8 Americans who also helped contribute. Between them, we made a board of 16 people, and they set an agenda. They hired Mordechai Green, and they started working on these types of projects. And Uri Maklev, one of the Chavrei Knesset, said that the greatest difficulty they have, even when they have in politics, is the Yoatz Mishpati. He says the legal counsel is you can have. You can get the minister to give $100 million to a yeshiva or to a project, and the Yoatz Mishpati, the legal counsel, a 25-year-old girl, right, says, no, I don't think it's legal, and you can't do anything about it, right? Because all of a sudden it became legal.
You'll argue with it,
right?
yeah.
So now, if you have a lawyer who comes and says, no, how could show
you could argue with it.
Now you can argue. You can argue. You can explain, and so on. So it became very valuable, and for numerous years, it was very effective, and made many changes, many issues that we fought on. Very often we didn't have to go to court. Sometimes they went to court, but we usually didn't have to go to court, because once you presented your case and you showed that you're willing to go to court, the other side backed down. He says, so it was very effective. But the Rebbe Binyomin, then the Agudah Yad went back into the government. And they went back into the government. He says they didn't need it anymore, right? So they were able to do with politics. They were able to do it for, and ultimately that didn't continue. That didn't last. But one of the Balabatim who was involved from America said, after we had B'Tzedek was the name of the organization, B'Tzedek was going, said, just a minute, you didn't say you're going to make B'Tzedek. You said you're going to make a number of projects. So what are we doing next? Right? what else are we doing? Public relations, interesting. Very interestingly, the Gedolim were not in favor of our. They were not in favor of our spending money and working on public relations of the Frum community. Reb Baron Leib said to me, one of the big issues, for instance, was Haredi Jews don't go to the army, right? And because of that, they hate us. He said, if tomorrow all of the Haredim would decide we're going to the army, you think they hate us any less? He didn't say it, But I suspect that they feel that the hatred to the Haredim is a little because they feel guilty, because they think that we're right, and they should be doing different, and they don't want to do it. So they're terrible people, right?
Yeah.
And the way they do it. So he says you're going to write articles in the newspaper and so on. He says that's
It's like the same thing with anti-Semitism. Like it's
Right.
just an excuse. They want to hate you because they want to hate you, so they'll find an excuse. But it's not that if you fix what they're screaming at you for,
Right.
they're gonna be okay. Now we could be friends. No, they'll just find something else to scream at you for.
right. And anti-Semitism is a different issue. Anti-Semitism, I think, that's the work of the Reb Binyomin to keep us separate. But that's because it's counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, why people should hate us? Anti-Semitism doesn't help. But Haredim, it does make sense. It makes sense because they feel in their heart of hearts that really this is what they should be doing, and they don't want to do it because
So
then
they
the
need
years.
to make it a
So
bad
they say,
thing.
oh, because it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing, so therefore I can hate it. And therefore, once I hate it, and you want me to be Haredi? These are terrible people. So to spend money and time and so on in that type of public relations campaign, they felt was not the right thing. Now, we did get involved in a project called Am Echad. Rabbi Shera wanted to have an Am Echad group and did organize an Am Echad to bring the world Jewry together, the Haredi community together. His goal was to try to get the OU and the Young Israel and all the broad community to come to explain to the politicians in Eretz Yisrael what the conservative reformed are, and to put it on the table. And we all agree how terrible they are. The broad Orthodox community, so he called them Echad. They actually had a delegation. Rabbi Sherik led the second delegation. That's when he got sick. At that time, it's another story. But so we took this idea of Am Echad. We found that the American newspapers were writing nasty articles about the Haredim in Eretz Yisrael because they were being fed it by the Israelis.
Israeli newspapers.
The Israeli newspapers and the conservative reform and so on. They would write negative articles. So nobody was defending us here. So we hired Jonathan Rosenblum on the name of Am Echad, and Jonathan Rosenblum befriended the secular press, the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times, and there was all the newspapers that they all had those that had correspondence here, and he got them and he prepared materials for them and he explained them. And then when there are articles about the Haredi community in the United States newspapers, it was always balanced, because they had a quote from somebody else that Jonathan Rosenblum did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that respect we did corroboration, but that wasn't for Eretz Yisrael. That was for us.
It was for America.
That was for America. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I said somebody else, what else are you doing?
What else? Always want more. Yeah.
Always want more. And at that time, the financial situation and the stability of the Haredi community was very poor. There were many, many homes without food on the table. And the women were not going to work. The women weren't going to work because the workplace wasn't the place that a Haredi woman could go to. And shalos with yichud, shalos with other things. So women stayed home. The men were in kollel, hardly making any money. So there was no money on the table. There was a model that was designed where Haredi women came and worked on a project independent of the rest of the company. And they made it comfortable for them, and they made it al pi halacha, and they said, this is a beautiful thing, but it's very limited. We should try to get more American companies to set up satellite companies. And he says, to do work for projects, do it in Mrs. Affen, who was the daughter of the Rosh Yeshiva in Detroit, Rav Bakst. Mrs. Affen was a computer programmer, and she worked for a large company. And she told that company, I'd like to provide jobs for women in the Haredi community, and they set up a separate unit for it. Then she can city book in Kiryat Sefer, opened up. She encouraged them. Itchy Rosenbaum opened up a branch of for women to do work for this company in Lakewood.
Sounds very much like Project Cope, like that was in America to help with the jobs for the frum community. But same idea.
Exactly, same way. We tried to get that for Israeli companies. We started a project called Temech. Tried to get it for for American companies. We were moderately successful, but very hard for an American company to open a branch here. Mm-hmm. But the Israeli companies saw the success, and they saw here's a resource of employees that they can have who can do terrific work, but you have to come halfway to them. You have to provide what they need. Some of them, the hours were shorter. They can be home when the children come home from school, and what started with a few, with maybe 50 or 100 women, grew to the point where Temech directly organized in close to 200 companies, over 7,000 jobs. But once the companies saw how to do it, they started their own 20 to 30,000 women today working in these types of circumstances. I remember when I went to the Belzer Rebbe, when we were discussing it, I said that in America, it's easier for us to get a woman to go to Rabbi, she'll go to work. He says, yeah, kvar ova v'shana. Right? He says, the women in Eretz Yisrael, they were more careful. He said the Haredish community were more careful in a place where they would let a woman work. But now, he's a Baruch Hashem, Baron Leib's ordered, the other Gedolei Yisrael started, and it really had a tremendous effect. So these are some of the things that we started during those days, during those years, and Baruch Hashem had tremendous revelations, had a tremendous effect, and I work on Klal Yisrael.
Beautiful. I think Temech is something you still work till today, even after you retired.
Right. I still do consulting for Temech, and they're changing in terms of what they're doing. But they opened a hub. The hub for women can come there to work, and they're working primarily because they've moved the job market for Haredi women is such that the women can participate, but there are 8,000 graduates from seminaries every year. And they have to provide parnasa. And just a small percentage of them go into teaching. And a small percentage of teaching jobs available. Now that there's a growth of the community, and what type of atmosphere, and how do you prepare them to go into the workplace? So these are some of the things that Temech is working on now, and I'm proud to be able to help them.
Yeah, I feel it's also so important because you have all the kohen that they need a source of income, and right. There's also once someone asked Baron Leib Steinman about his daughter. She was thinking to go into seminary, so he asked the big thing was to learn to become a teacher. This way you're in Beis Yaakov. That was before Temech. Probably there wasn't too many options for a lady to work. Mm-hmm. So yes, that obviously he wants to, her daughter should go to seminary to learn to become a teacher, but, there's not so much money in it, and it's much harder to find a job, so maybe she should learn to become an accountant or, something else. But, he wanted to hear from her, no, Taka, she should work, this way she could stay in a firm environment, and she should become a teacher, even though she's going to make less money. But Reb Steinman said, no, she's going to get married in Hashem. She's going to need to support her family. So no, if she can make more money, and so she should go to a job that it's easier to find, and not dafka thing. I think it's probably so huge, that.
It's a difficult decision. I think it's a difficult decision, and each person. No, yes, when Temech first started, the seminaries only taught education, and they encouraged everybody to go into education. The problem is with 8,000 girls graduating, about 1,000 jobs or 1,500 jobs, is you best probably if they would stay in education, and we need an education, but since you need so many jobs, as the situation opened up that it was. It was so important. Just the one last note on that. Itchy Rosenbaum, who's the city book and the key member for the board of Temech, once had a period of time where things were very difficult and had the possibility of laying off people, and the Choshev Arov came to Reb Aaron Leib together with Itchy Rosenbaum, and he introduced them. He said, he says there are 300 Kolyungalites who wouldn't have parnosis if not for Itchy Rosenbaum, right? If the work that he does. So Reb Aaron Leib turned to Reb Itchy Rosenbaum, and he said, "Please tell the Rov that he's making a choice. He's making a mistake. HaKadosh Baruch will take care of the 300 Kohen Gadol. You have a tremendous chus. You're the one who's to be able to help. Mm-hmm. But don't say without a Shirozim, it's not going to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu still runs the world.
It's the Shlichim,
and the Shlichim, and everybody has to decide how best to do it in the guidance of their Rov, in their Rosh Hashiva, and they have to see. For some, it's better to go in the workplace. Some it's better to stay home with the children. And some of the teachers, and then some maybe should just stay home with the children. The board felt guilty. They felt, look, we've gotten 25,000 women to get out of the house and going to work. Maybe it's not good for the chinuch of the kids. Maybe they would be better off staying home with their children. And we went to Reb David Cohen, so Shiva Chevron, the board met with him. He said, Adarabba. He says, what Tamach did, he says they saved Torah. They didn't save it. They were the tool. They were the ability to save the Kohen Gadol, to save Klal Yisrael. Otherwise, it would have been that much more difficult. And what they did is tremendous work. On the other hand, they have to work to continue to see that the matzah goes straight.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe. If you would like to help us spread the word, give this video a thumbs up and a 5-star review. Also, don't forget to ask your friends to subscribe as well. If you would like to partner with us and sponsor an episode, send an email to info@JFoundations.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. We will see you in the next video.